technology, that plethora of devices that makes life more convenient for everybody, but for those of us with disabilities is truly life-changing. Since I was born blind, I've used technology my whole life to do my work, keep in touch with my community, and maintain my independence. With COVID-19 forcing us to stay physically apart, it's more important than ever for keeping us connected, productive, and together. I'm Grant Hardy, and this is Powered Up, Assistive Technology during COVID-19. When you use assistive technology for daily living as well as working and maintaining your brand, you know more than anyone how invaluable it is. Glenda Watson-Hyatt, motivational speaker, author, blogger, and self-advocate, uses assistive technology to thrive. Since she has cerebral palsy and a speech disability, she also uses it to communicate.
My voice.
My voice. In doing my work, whether it is as social media coordinator, or as an author or blogger, or as a keynote speaker, I use various assistive technologies seamlessly in my workflow. These technologies include a sturdy joystick in place of the mouse, a wrist pad placed above the keyboard for my hand to guide along while I type with only my left thumb, the keyboard accessibility feature, sticky keys, available in Microsoft Windows, word prediction, and abbreviation expansion apps, which somewhat increases the typing speed of my left thumb. Text-to-speech software for converting my written word into the spoken word. These assistive technologies, combined with email, Facebook, WordPress, Zoom, Microsoft Office, Camtasia, and other software programs, enable me to create so much, whether it is my speaker website at glendawatsonhyatt.com, publishing books on Amazon, or editing my videos for my YouTube channel. Honestly, thanks to technology, I can run my own business pretty much myself.
That's incredible, Glenda. What are some other ways that you use assistive technology to adapt?
My communication disability is more complex to accommodate and depends upon the situation. With family and close friends familiar with my unique speech pattern, I need to repeat only the occasional word to be understood, as if my speech impairment essentially disappears. These cherished individuals possess the magical powers of the willingness to truly listen and the desire to work, to understand what I am saying. Depending upon the situation, I use various methods to communicate. My iPad with assistive wears, text-to-speech app, Proloquo for text, which I am using now to give this frickin' amazing interview. A low-tech communication board. And a trusted person, usually my husband Daryl, to assist with phone calls and to accompany me when communication is critical and when using my iPad might not be fast enough, such as medical appointments. It is when I am out and about that I run into barriers while attempting to communicate. Some people assume that I am cognitively impaired or hard of hearing, and they talk down to me, gesture, or write notes. Other people don't even speak with me. They talk to someone else who may be with me, or they even ignore me. It is so frustrating and exasperating to interact with these kinds of unenlightened individuals.
Well, Glenda, I have to ask you, given all of that, what do you think about when you imagine a life without assistive technology?
Wow. Imagining a world without assistive technology gives me heart palpitations. The image is bleak. Without my scooter and grab bars, I couldn't function within my own home, and most likely, I would be confined to bed. Without my computer and sundry technologies, I couldn't run my business or connect with friends from around the world. Without assistive technologies, like automatic door openers, elevators, and ramps and curb cuts, I could not freely and independently navigate the physical world. Without my iPad and Proloquo for text app, I could not have taken the TEDx stage, as I did in November, nor stages in the future, to live my dream career of being a well-paid, internationally known, keynote speaker. Without assistive technology, my life wouldn't be much of a life at all.
It may be hard for a millennial like me to imagine not having assistive technologies to rely on, but they've developed and evolved rapidly throughout the last few dozen years. Steve Barclay, president of Canadian Assistive Technologies, has been in the AT field for 30 years. He also sees the impact that assistive technology has had on his clients.
You get really addicted to seeing the impact that you have on people's lives. One of my earliest experiences in the industry was delivering a large print system, a print magnification system, to a veteran. I set the thing up. We put some print underneath it. We magnified it, and he was able to read for the first time in about 5 years. And that guy who, had fought his way across Europe started to cry. He was suddenly able to do something that he had taken for granted for a long time and then lost. There's not a lot of industries where you get to have that tangible and immediate an impact on somebody's life.
Yeah, that's what I love about assistive technology. It's just that impact. Speaking of which, can we talk about COVID-19 and the impact that has had on your clients' lives?
So I think there were probably more challenges for the physically disabled population than there might have been for, say, the visually impaired population. Oftentimes somebody with a physical disability might have a height adjustable workstation, for example. Well, those are neither cheap nor easy to get into a place when nobody's supposed to be going into other people's homes. So I think there've probably been a lot of challenges around getting those sorts of technologies in place. But the bonus out of all of this, again, is that employers are now actively trying to find solutions for employees to work from home and are not encouraging a lot of them to come back. This is, I think, down the line, a real positive improvement for people with a variety of disabilities.
Well, that's great to hear that there could actually be more opportunities for people in the disability community on the horizon. Steve, I wanted to talk about one product category that's empowered me all throughout my life, first at school, now at work, is the Braille note taker. Can you talk about note takers? What are the leading brands? How do people choose the right one?
So the big three note takers in the market right now are the L Braille from Freedom Scientific. That's a Windows-based device. The Polaris from HIMS, which is an Android-based device, and the Braille Note Touch from Humanware, which is another Android-based device. Oftentimes, people are going to make their choice based on the operating system alone and what they're most comfortable with. If you're doing a lot of Windows stuff, you're probably going to stick to an L Braille. The Polaris and the Braille Note Touch are extremely popular in education. Primarily because both of those companies have worked really, really hard to get things in it like support for Braille mathematics. The Polaris is a little bit smaller, the Touch is a little bit bigger, but the Touch has a visual display on it. So if you're working with somebody who's sighted, like a teacher, for example, you can just flip up the keyboard and look at the display and see what's going on the display, which is a huge convenience for a teacher. The Polaris has a small visual display on it, but if you want to see the majority of the information on it, you're better off to plug it into a monitor.
There's so much to say about tech at work, but coming up after the break, we'll move on to education. When we return to Powered Up, Assistive Technology During COVID-19. You're watching Powered Up, Assistive Technology During COVID-19. The spring term of high school traditionally means prom, provincial exams, and plans for the future. But with COVID-19 turning away all in-person classes, students and teachers had to do things differently with technology as a helping hand. Like partially sighted student Sam Sorensen.
So I'm really thankful I have a MacBook Air, and that was a big help for me with between voiceover and having the Zoom option like it has. Between those two methods, it wasn't as much of a struggle to go from class to online. But the fact is like my eyes get really tired if I spend a long time on a screen. So for me, it was really hard to do like 5 or 6 hours of schoolwork because my eyes they wore out so quickly.
What was the most challenging subject for you?
Ooh, I would have to say math was really complex for me because like I'm already not very strong at math. And so when we would get math assignments, like I could do the math, but I'm not the strongest computer user when it comes to keyboards and knowing the different key commands to get the different buttons and stuff. Like I'm not very good at that. So I have to either Google them, ask my dad if he knows, or find someone that knows what keys to hit in order to get that function that I need for math.
Well, you're talking to a guy who did the minimum amount of math that I had to, so I completely understand. On a lighter note, what are your plans for the future?
Eventually in the future, I would like to become a part of Apple support. If I didn't have assistive technology, I wouldn't have as much access to things as I do with assistive technology, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense to Sam's vision teacher and orientation and mobility specialist, Carrie Barclay, who relied on technology to teach her students during our remote learning era.
In college, I tell my students that you're not going to carry around 4 different textbooks. You're going to want all of your textbooks online. And now that they had to have their textbooks online at home, it was like, oh, this is easier. So I actually wrote an email to one of my parents and I was like, yeah, I'm really excited for this because now like those goals that we had about assistive technology and learning Word document and shortcut keys, you're going to use it now because you have to.
Carrie, I'm a tech lover, but I gotta say, orientation and mobility is one of those subjects I've just always assumed has got to be done in person. How have you adapted to online O&M?
Yeah, so as an orientation and mobility specialist, right away I panicked and I was like, how am I going to do this remotely? Because I take my students downtown, we're crossing intersections, we're riding buses all the time. And all of a sudden, all of those doors were closed at once. And how am I going to teach these skills remotely? But what I did for some of my younger students is I would have them go on scavenger hunt walks with their parents, and they had to find certain stop signs and explain to their parents what did that mean and talk about an intersection that they saw. Was it a plus intersection? Was it a T intersection? And having those conversations, and then they would come back to me via Zoom or FaceTime and we'd chat about the different things they noticed.
Yeah, it sounds not only creative, but also fun too. How do you teach independent living skills online?
So with independent living skills, lots of times it is hands-on, but during COVID, I was able to take some baking recipes that I love to do, and I created like a home baking kit and sent those home with some of my parents, and they were able to work side by side with their student and kind of bake something or create a meal. One other student, we did a Zoom conference where she did some housework in her house while we were chatting on Zoom, and she just showed me her real life. And it was cool because at school we don't get to do some of those things, so it was like, oh, how are you going to adapt that? Like what are some things that you could use within your house to get that task done?
Like I said before, I'm a tech lover, but I've got to give most of the credit here to the enthusiasm and tenacity of people like Sam and Carrie. There's lots more after the break as we turn to our personal devices. When we return to Powered Up, Assistive Technology During COVID-19. This is Powered Up, Assistive Technology During COVID-19. Whether at home, at work, or in education, assistive technology is empowering until our devices play up, our accounts get locked out, or we encounter an accessibility barrier. With more of us working from home than ever before, it's important that we keep our online accounts protected, which is where a password manager comes in, a techie product that even non-techies should be using. Michael Thay of 1Password tells us about what their app does.
So today, most people, if they don't use a password manager, they use the same password or a variant of the same password for their different accounts. So, you know, your dog's name backwards plus your favorite color and the year you were born, right? Like that's stuff like that. And they think it's secure and they think it's safe. The problem is that, first of all, those are almost certainly not safe and secure because chances are someone has that dog that was same dog's name that was born the same year as you with the same favorite color. And, you know, those types of things actually are more common than people might think. But also, if any one site gets compromised, if there's a breach at a particular website where you're using this password and that password gets out, now that sort of compromises an entire swath of your online life. You know, you might trust your bank and the security around your bank and everything else, but maybe the place where you order your coffee hasn't done the same sort of due diligence to online security that your bank has. And if you're using the same password for both, you're sort of opting into that minimum security. So with an app like 1Password, we actually help you generate strong, unique passwords for all your different websites. And ideally, you don't know any of them. I think personally, I have about 3 passwords of mine memorized, but I've got about 500 really, because I do a lot. But, you know, and all of them are unique and strong. And I just know my 1Password that allows me to log into my app, and then it fills it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we only have a limited memory capacity for passwords, which is why a password manager like 1Password is so critical. Can you talk about some of the other safety features 1Password offers?
1Password also takes additional steps to help you be secure in your online life. So we are running scans against the data that you've stored there to see if you've had any passwords that have been exposed in online breaches. If there have been websites that have been breached, you know, you will be, and you have those logins, you'll be notified about those breaches. We let you know about weak passwords that you might have entered into 1Password, or credit cards that are expiring, and or driver's licenses that are expiring. Pretty much anything that expires that's in 1Password, you can go and find, and it'll be notified of when it's expiring. So we have this whole product called Watchtower, which encompasses all of these features of helping you stay safe and being a bit more proactive about your safety.
One thing I love about 1Password as well is that it's been designed with accessibility in mind. Can you talk a little bit about that?
1Password does take accessibility very seriously. We look at something like voice control that Apple introduced last year with iOS 13, which was great. It allows you to sort of verbally move around a screen and do everything that you can do with your fingers, which is really cool. And as a result of the work that we had put in previously for VoiceOver and other accessibility features, we mostly got voice control for free.
From accessible software to accessible smartphones, while AMI's research has indicated that iPhones are the dominant player in the accessibility community, this year's Global Accessibility Awareness Day was marked by some new innovations Google brought to the Android side of the fence. And who better to chat with me about them than Andy Barrar from Handy Andy Media.
Andy, I want to start by talking about Sound Amplifier.
Yeah, so this is a really cool feature, and it basically can turn your phone into almost like a hearing aid. And the way that Sound Amplify works, and this new addition, they've had this before, but you have to have a headphone jack. And as you know, Grant, a lot of the phones now are ditching the headphone jack because everyone's using Bluetooth headsets. Well, with Sound Amplify, it works with Bluetooth. So say if you are in a class and you're hard of hearing, you can put your phone closer to the lecturer and then listen in on your Bluetooth headset. So a feature like that is going to be very good, an accessibility feature for people that are hard of hearing. And one feature that they've introduced is called action blocks. And basically, this takes those typical things you would use Google Assistants with, but you can make it into an action. So with one button that you could put as a widget on your Android phone, you could then start, say, a Zoom call with all your family members. And so something like that is going to make it really easy for people to use those Google Assistant features that we all use with our voices, like turning lights on and off, but now with just a single button on the front of your screen as a widget.
You know what I'd love is, honestly, for some people, it's going to be a convenience. For other people, it's going to be life-changing. Let's move on, Andy, and talk about live transcribe.
If you have, say, a meeting, a video call, or a face-to-face call, it will transcribe your conversation. For instance, it could transcribe our conversation right now. And so this is another great accessibility feature for people, because you get basically a text version of that conversation automatically. You don't have to transcribe it yourself. It's automatically going to do it. Now, the processing is happening in the cloud, but the actual data, that the transcription itself, will live on the phone. And I think that's an important thing, is in live transcribe, you can actually design it so that it will recognize the person's name. And so if someone else says that name, your phone will vibrate. And this is another great accessibility feature for somebody who is hard of hearing.
I think this is going to be super. Andy, how do accessibility features like this change people's lives?
What really makes me happy right now is you can be an Android user and still be empowered by accessibility features. And it doesn't mean that you have to be somebody that is hard of hearing or has vision issues to take advantage of accessibility features. And I think a lot of general people, general Android users, are going to find these accessibility features are very, very useful. Me personally, the live transcribe is a godsend, because I have to interview people and I have to quote them properly. And now I don't have to go back and write everything down, because live transcribe is going to do it for me and to ensure that I get those quotes perfectly done.
When people in the industry talk about accessibility features, devices, and gadgets, they're really talking about so much more than apps and data. Whether for students like Sam, motivational speakers like Glenda, or teachers like Carrie, technology helps people learn, communicate, and grow. Personally, I can't imagine life without it. Now that's empowering. Host, producer, Grant Hardy. Producer, Amit Tandon. Videographer, editor, Sergio Vera Barahona. Integrated Described Video Specialist, M. Williams. Audio post, Mark Phoenix. Graphics, Mike Smith. Post-production supervisor, Jennifer Johnson. Senior producer, Michelle Dudas. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2020, Accessible Media Incorporated.